stage. Thank you. Ms. Maleeha Lodhi will be joining us shortly. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and all lovers of literature. It is our pleasure to welcome you all to OUP's 10th Literature Festival here in Islamabad. This festival is a celebration of words, ideas, and creativity, a chance to immerse ourselves in the power of literature and to explore the profound impact it has on our thinking, our lives, and our society. As we gather here today, we are reminded that literature is a bridge connecting people, ideas, and cultures across time and space. It is a way to share stories that shape our identities, our communities, and our world. Here in Pakistan, we are blessed with a rich literary heritage that seamlessly blends tradition with modernity. The OUP Literature Festival honors that heritage while opening new doors to diverse voices and fresh perspectives. It is my pleasure now to welcome the Managing Director of the Oxford University Press, Mr. Arshad Saeed Husain, to open our ceremony. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Ms. Jane Marriott, British High Commissioner to Pakistan, Ms. Natalie Baker, Deputy Head of Mission, US Embassy, Honorable Keynote Speaker, Ms. Zehra Nigah, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It gives me the greatest pleasure to welcome you to the 10th Islamabad Literature Festival, where the serene beauty of the Margala Hills, like a painter's masterpiece, sets the perfect backdrop for a celebration of words and ideas. The hills whisper tales of inspiration, inviting you to immerse yourself in the literary wonders that await us. As we gather here today, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment in history. The unprecedented outcome of the US elections will undoubtedly have far-reaching implications, influencing international relations, economic policies, and global stability. This election is not just about one nation. It is about the future direction of our interconnected world. All around us, we are witnessing a resurgence of territorial and resource conflicts, where nations vie for dominance and control. Authoritarian populist regimes and rightist movements are gaining ground across the world, challenging the principles of democracy and human rights. Political systems in much of the world are in crisis, a crisis of leadership. The ongoing war in Gaza has tragically claimed an entire generation of men, women, and children, while the Israel-Palestine conflict is in danger of engulfing the Middle East, casting a threatening shadow over the hopes for peace. The Ukraine war continues unabated, causing widespread destruction and displacement. In South Asia, the Kashmir conflict has persisted for 77 long years, a stark reminder of the enduring struggles for self-determination and justice. Meanwhile, the global climate crisis looms larger than ever, with extreme weather events and environmental degradation threatening our very existence. The recent floods in Spain and the back-to-back hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico have left behind trails of devastation. Ladies and gentlemen, amidst Islamabad's serene green hills, it's easy to forget that across our country, our cities are swelling with pollution and decay. The very air of the garden city of Lahore has become a fortress of killer smog, setting new world standards of pollution, which are 4.5 times the hazardous level declared by the WHO. Climate change is a pressing challenge for Pakistan, demanding immediate and sustained action to protect our environment for future generations. Amidst these challenges, we stand on the brink of a new era with the advent of artificial intelligence. Will AI lead us into mayhem and chaos? Or will it chart a new course for humanity, offering solutions to the world's most pressing problems? And what about us here in Pakistan? Where do we stand? While we struggle with various social development indices, there's one crucial factor to consider: our youth and their education. Investing in their education and skill development is key to driving social and economic progress. By addressing issues like access to quality education and upgrading curricula to make it more relevant for the jobs of today and tomorrow, we can empower our youth to build a brighter future for Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO's Global Education Report 2024 reveals that the global out-of-school population has only decreased by 1% in the past decade. Today, across the world, there are 251 million children who are still out of school. And of these, Pakistan's share is more than 10%. 26 million out-of-school children. A stark reality that we must reflect on. Today, Pakistan spends only 1.9% of its GDP on education, which is half that of the rest of the world combined, and less than 1/3 that of the developed world. These are worrying statistics which need urgent and immediate attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot allow our past mistakes to cloud the future of our children. To understand what needs to be done, and before we can outline a better system of education, we need to understand those for whom we are devising it, and the kind of future society in which those children would be living. For those reaching maturity in the 21st century, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and now the Gen Alphas, the landscape has dramatically changed. Today's youth don't choose to be different. They are inherently different. They acquire knowledge, education, and cultural expression in new ways due to the transformative technologies of the digital age. Innovation is now a constant in our lives. The nature of books and reading has evolved with instant global communication, the omnipresent social media, and now generative AI. These technological advancements are altering how minds work and brains are wired. As educators, authors, writers, and publishers, we must understand the implication of this new world order, both on what and how the young minds will read and learn in the future. Our education system faces serious deficits. High adult illiteracy, millions of out-of-school children, and outdated curricula and teaching methods. But the challenge is even more complex. We must understand the minds of the digital age and create educational policies and materials that cater to them. This is the audience for whom we publish books, create plays, compose music, make art, and develop entertainment. In an era of rapid technological advancement, artificial intelligence has emerged as a transformative force across various sectors. Among the many domains where AI is leaving an indelible mark, education stands out as one of the most promising and challenging frontiers. AI aims to innovate teaching and learning practices, contributing significantly to the rapid progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4, which focuses on providing inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities. By acting as a social resource multiplier, AI assists in offering students a more personalized and efficient educational journey, thus enhancing societal development. With its potential to address some of the biggest challenges in education today, AI is poised to revolutionize the field. UNESCO is committed to supporting member states in harnessing the potential of AI to achieve its Education 2030 agenda, which promises AI for all. It emphasizes that we must ensure that AI does not widen the technological divide within and between countries. Critics of AI in education raise concerns about potential dehumanization of the education process, data privacy, and biases in AI-driven tools, as well as ethical concerns and the credibility of AI-produced research. These apprehensions must be acknowledged and mitigated to ensure that AI's use in education is ethical, responsible, and effective. To encourage and harmonize AI education and training in Pakistan, there is a need to establish AI institutes of higher learning at both the federal and provincial levels in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to leave you with these thoughts. I trust you will find the coming 2.5 days stimulating, fulfilling, and enjoyable. As the Managing Director of Oxford University Press in Pakistan, I would like to confirm my organization's commitment to embracing technology in the right way. We firmly believe that education should always drive technology and not the other way around. I'm not talking about replacing or doing away with traditional textbooks and printed material. I'm talking about blended learning, using it side by side with virtual online material. The institution that I head, by its very nature, is deeply involved in the process of education. An event like the Literature Festival we are inaugurating today, is part and parcel of that process. By bringing together scholars, intellectuals, artists, writers, entertainers, policymakers to engage in discussions over many issues, we are creating living examples of critical thinking and thought leadership to place before the people. I would now like to thank our sponsors, especially Getz Pharma, our title sponsor, and then NEO, Color Your Life, Millennium Education, Tapal Danedar, UBL Bank, NBP Funds, 4G Cement, 4G Fertilizer, U Microfinance Bank, UBL Funds, Allied Funds, SMS Security, Tehzeeb Foundation of Pakistan, SI Global, Money Matters, and Nestle Professional, without whose generous support this festival would not have been made possible. A very big thank you to members of our advisory committee, Ms. Muniza Shamsi, Mr. Iftikhar Arif, Ms. Zehra Nigah, Ms. Kishwar Nahid, Mr. Haris Khaliq, and Salman Tariq Qureshi, and Tehmina Aziz Ayub, whose guidance is seminal to this festival. Last but not least, thank you all for joining us for this 10th Literature Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arshad Saeed Husain, for those insightful words. Thank you. We are honored today to have distinguished representatives from the international community who share our commitment to fostering cultural exchange and understanding. I'd like to welcome Her Excellency, the British High Commissioner to Pakistan, Jane Marriott. Her Excellency has been a strong supporter of cultural diplomacy, encouraging the arts as a way to deepen ties and bridge differences between our nations. Please join me in welcoming Her Excellency Jane Marriott to the podium.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And Arshad, amazing, fantastic speech, and you put me to shame because you've gone digital. I'm still a Luddite. I like the safety and sanctity of paper just in case the IT fails and I can't quite get it to work in front of a large audience. So forgive me, I promise I will plant a tree. But good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is absolutely amazing to see you all, and it's an absolute pleasure to be back at the opening ceremony of the 10th Islamabad Literary Festival. Thank you very much for having me back. I feel obliged to tell you that since I was here last year, I've done my part on the literature front. I've made sure that I've read one book a month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in a busy job it is. I hope some of you can relate. My favourites including Permacrisis, by many world leaders, including former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown. If you haven't read Permacrisis, I recommend it. It's got solutions in there, not just looking at the state of the world and all of the internet-connected crises that we've seen today. I read an action novel about diplomacy, yes, there is such a thing, called The Assassin, by my former colleague and the new head and UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher. And of course, I also read Broken Threads by the BBC's Michelle Husain on her family history and journey in Pakistan. But first of all, congratulations to Oxford University Press on this very important event that brings us all together, and a very happy birthday from all of us at the British High Commission and the British Council. I think I've just seen James Hampson, our head of the British Council, over there as well. We're very fortunate to have several high-profile UK publishers here for the festival, including, of course, Oxford University Press, with its long and active associations with Pakistan. And as I said on my first visit to this festival a year ago, it would not, I hope, be my last. And I spoke then about the importance of language, of education, and of the deep ties between our two countries. Because I think Pakistan and the UK are blessed to call many literary legends their own, and several enjoy the rich mix of heritage from both places, from the UK and Pakistan. because we know that great writing and brilliant authors, and there are many sat in the room today, help us see things differently. They help us see different perspectives, introduce new ideas, new challenges, develop empathy with people and situations that we may not have thought about before. And they also provide space in our busy minds to just stop and think and be immersed in what we are reading. And today, as I reflect 12 months on, a lot has changed, but also a great deal has stayed the same. Firstly, we have new governments in the UK and Pakistan, and of course in the US, but I'm not here to talk about the US. Our leaders in the UK have met yours in Pakistan, including in New York at the United Nations Ministerial Conferences, next week in Baku at COP, and in London, and hopefully before too long here in Pakistan. Because the fundamentals of the relationship remain strong, even when the England team are on the wrong side of that test result, which I'm still bitter about. But soft power and connections between people are strengthened by events such as this festival. They were actually also strengthened by the England test season here in Pakistan. 200 English cricket fans travelled all the way to Pakistan, and whilst our team lost, I think both they, the Barmy Army, as the travelling England fans are known, I think they and the team also won, because they won culturally and spiritually. The warm welcome from Pakistanis, the sharing of cultures, will be as memorable to them as the records that they broke in Multan in that first test, where they did a little better. And actually, it was just lovely talking to some of the English cricket fans afterwards, talking about their experiences here. And in fact, by the end, when I have to confess, England were not doing particularly well, some of the England fans even started holding up placards saying, "Go Pakistan." But what they really loved is pretty much every morning, somebody from Pakistan, somebody they had never met before, would come up to the stands of the English fans and would give them an English flag or a Pakistani flag or a placard that said, "Welcome my brothers and sisters from England." That is soft power in its extreme. So thank you, Pakistan, for that warm people-to-people welcome. And I've also really appreciated the warm welcome here from Pakistan in the 16 months since I arrived, particularly the generosity of Pakistanis in sharing food. I definitely feel my trousers are a little bit tighter after a year and a half in Pakistan, for sharing your conversations and for sharing your friendship. It has all been greatly appreciated. And occasionally, when I have a night off, I will watch a book, or I confess I will sometimes watch TV. And I should confess, Natalie, I'm currently addicted to Netflix's The Diplomat, because it does to diplomacy what James Bond does to spying. It makes us look cool and sexy and at the heart of the action. But I'm only on episode 4, so don't tell me what's currently happening. But whilst the series takes a poetic license in what the life of a diplomat looks like, the one theme that resonates is that talking to each other matters, getting to know one another matters, and language, of course, as I said last year, really does matter in that. And to borrow from the theme of this year's literary festival, words change mindsets. And while no two humans and no two countries will agree on everything, the challenges that we face together are everywhere you look, from securing strong, inclusive economic growth to combating the impact of climate change, as you mentioned, Arshad, ensuring that quality education is there for everybody, and in supporting the importance of governance, of open societies, of freedom of media. Those issues are important, and they are all interlinked. Working together in genuine partnership creates the conditions for change. The words and language we use to describe what we want to achieve, how we want to do it, why it matters, is important. And I'm going to apply this to education, which Arshad, you just very eloquently set out there. Since we met last year, your Prime Minister has announced an education emergency. And the UK is playing a significant role in supporting the efforts of governments across Pakistan to try and establish effective, inclusive, resilient education systems, providing quality education for all children. This is particularly true for the children who are the hardest to reach. Many girls, disabled people, but also the boys. Millions of cases are out of school. And those who are in school are not learning enough at the quality they need. The rate of learning poverty in Pakistan is the second highest in South Asia. And that's why next week, James's boss, the British Council's Global Chief Executive, Scott MacDonald, and I will be proud to launch a new £20 million UK government investment in getting girls and the most marginalised children back into the classroom in KP and in Punjab. Thank you. We're also focused on improving learning outcomes in schools, helping more than 250,000 children. And sometimes I struggle, to be honest with this. I look at statistics like this, I look at speeches like this that my wonderful team provide, and I go, 250,000 children. Wow, what an amazing accomplishment. Well done, Britain. And then I look at the maths. There's 6 million children entering the school year every year. So 250,000 is good, but it's not going to institutionally change where we need to be. That has to come at the top, that has to come through governments. We are working closely with federal and provincial governments and development partners to improve the capacity of education systems to address those systemic barriers to deprivation from schooling and learning. And that's because education is and has been for over a decade the biggest thing the UK does in Pakistan, combining the collective strength of the different parts of our systems, the Foreign Office, the British Council, our Department for Business and Trade, from a focus on foundational learning through primary and secondary school to higher education and vocational skills. We want to help those who need it the most and create the conditions for more of our universities to collaborate. Many of you, I think hopefully some of you in the room, will have been beneficiaries of a British education or taken a world-class UK qualification. You may have been lucky enough to have got a Chevening or a Commonwealth scholarship to travel and work and live in the UK and study in the UK. Over the last 18 months alone, the British Council has delivered more than 1 million exams across Pakistan. And there is more choice coming into this market every year for Pakistani students, with more than 50 British exam boards active in Pakistan, including soon Oxford AQA. More and more students, 11,000 at the last count, are choosing to study for a British university degree qualification in Pakistan itself, where it is cheaper than going to the UK, of course. And earlier this year, we welcomed Sir Steve Smith, the UK's international education champion, to Pakistan for his first visit in that role, where he built on the foundations of the Pakistan-UK Education Gateway, a joint venture between the British Council and the Higher Education Commission, because we want to see this aspect of our relationship of being able to study for international degrees here in Pakistan. We want to see that grow and grow. Now, I started this week by meeting a lovely and award-winning Canadian music producer called Michael Brook. And many of you will know that Michael worked with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan at Peter Gabriel's studios in Bath on what became, more than 30 years later, the Chain of Light album, based on hitherto forgotten recordings by Nusrat from the 1990s. And with thanks to Real World Records, Sena Bashir and the British Council, we've been able to share in what was once lost and now has been found again. This didn't make the media splash that I hoped, but I hope the idea that there are 4 tracks sung by Nusrat in 1990 that have never been heard before, I hope is enough to make you go to Spotify later on today and look at those tracks and download them. For the older people in the room, I hope this will bring back memories. For the younger people in the room, I know many of you are already big Nusrat fans, and I hope this brings you pleasure that we've been able to do through the support of the British Council and others. Because it's a reminder about how important protecting and preserving cultural heritage is. And it's one of those unique moments in the UK-Pakistan relationship, which is just a gift. Now, Arshad, you mentioned UNESCO and the importance there. And last year I spoke about the UK's Cultural Protection Fund, which is being run for the first time in Pakistan by the British Council in collaboration with the UK government. And in Pakistan, the fund has awarded grants to projects which protect cultural heritage, which is at risk from conflict, climate change, and highlighted the important role local communities can play. I'm sorry to say there were a lot of possible takers for this. There is a lot of Pakistan's heritage that is under threat right now. But it's very hard not to be inspired by the successful projects, mapping the Indus Valley, preserving and promoting Hazara heritage, and the Buddhist rock reliefs of the Swat Valley. All of these are hugely evocative, giving a sense of the scale, a little bit of adventure, but with a deeply serious purpose at their heart to preserve the incredible past, the incredible history and culture that we have here in Pakistan. Which returns me, as I near the end of my speech, what has not changed in the last year, and that's the theme of 2023's ILF, which is climate change and education. It's been really hard to watch, and even harder for the people experiencing it, of course, the impact of air pollution on Punjab. Particularly, the government has had to take difficult decisions for the right reasons to close schools all week. This is not sustainable, and it's where the issues interlink. As we saw during the flood, it's really hard to recover in the face of shocks, but it's also why the UK is going to be focusing a lot more support on Pakistan's climate emergency as well as its education emergency, because climate change is a shared challenge which impacts all of us, which I think we all feel is utterly desperate, but the speed of which is not going fast enough in spite of all of us putting our shoulders behind this. I'm going to leave you with this on 2024's theme. There is a better future out there for all of us, but it isn't going to benefit most of us. It's the next generation, the students, any children they have, the young people, many of whom are in the room, many of whom are outside, who are relying on the people with power. And to be honest, and I think I mentioned this last year, I'm a little fed up of people over 40 and over 50 going, the youth will save us, I have hope in the next generation. Certainly that's been the theme in the West. We have hope in the next generation to save us. Well, if I'm in that next generation, I'm looking at people like me going, I'm sorry, you're the ones in power. You're the ones who screwed this up. What are you doing to change this? And I feel that it's an obligation on all of us with a modicum of power, including people like me, to try and do something, however little, whatever impact we can have, to try and tackle that. And in a couple of weeks' time, I'll be doing a big announcement around climate investment finance as part of the British High Commission's contribution to this. Now, we know that Pakistan has talent, too much of it is untapped, and it has on occasion been held back. But as the theme says, words can change mindsets, but actions are needed too. And the future of the UK and Pakistan, inextricably linked, depends on both words and on actions. So happy 10th birthday to ILF. Thank you, Arshad, Aisha and team. Happy reading, good listening, and I hope you all have a brilliant weekend here. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We are grateful for your support and your presence here today. Thank you. We are privileged to have with us today the Deputy Chief of Mission from the US Embassy in Islamabad. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Natalie Baker.
Thank you so much. I'll be very short in my remarks today. First, of course, I want to thank you, Mr. Arshad, and the entire ILF team and Oxford University Press for welcoming us today. And congratulations to the entire team on hosting the 10th Islamabad Literature Festival. The U.S. mission in Pakistan has proudly supported the Islamabad Literature Festival for the last 10 years. Through a partnership with the ILF, our goal has been to strengthen the ties between the people of the United States and the people of Pakistan through literary and educational exchanges. I look forward to meeting Pakistani writers and other speakers and guests to learn more about Pakistan's literary history. I only arrived 3 months ago, but I've already felt the hospitality of the Pakistani people and have been able to travel a bit to learn more about your deep and rich culture and the wonderful talent that you exhibit across all of the arts, education fields, in writing, in literature, in poetry. And I've been so impressed. So congratulations once again to the organizers for 10 successful years of the Islamabad Literature Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker, for sharing your thoughts. Next, it is my honor to introduce a celebrated poet whose work brings the beauty, complexity, and nuances of our culture to life. Zehra Nigah Sahiba has touched countless hearts through her words. Please join me in welcoming Zehra Nigah Sahiba.
Honorable British High Commissioner, معزز اراکین اسٹیٹ, قابل احترام خواتین و حضرات اور عزیزان من, او یو پی کی ایک روایت رہی ہے یہ کہ ادبی میلے کی افتتاحی تقاریر انگریزی اور اردو دونوں میں ہوتی ہیں. اگر آپ غور کریں تو آکسفورڈ یونیورسٹی کی خود تاریخ اور تہذیب روایت کی ایک جیتی جاگتی نشانی ہے, اس لیے کہ آج سے 100 برس پہلے یا 700 برس پہلے یا 1000 برس پہلے 2000 برس پہلے جو بھی حکام ہندوستان پر حکومت کرنے آتے تھے تو اسی یونیورسٹی سے فارسی اور ٹوٹی پھوٹی اردو کی تعلیم حاصل کر کے حکومت کرنے کے لیے آتے تھے. اس لیے اس سے متعلق ہر جلسے کو اپنی روایت برقرار رکھنی ہے. یہ 10واں فیسٹیول ہے. ابھی تک پاکستان میں او یو پی کے 10 فیسٹیولز ہو چکے ہیں اور اس کی 10 سالہ تاریخ بے حد شاندار رہی ہے. 10 سال کے عرصے میں اس فیسٹیول نے, آپ یقین مانیے, لوگوں کو بہت کچھ دیا ہے. کسی سے کچھ لیا نہیں, کسی سے کچھ مانگا نہیں. فیسٹیول کے اختتام پر جب سب لوگ اپنے اپنے گھروں کی طرف روانہ ہوتے تھے تو ان کے دامن بھرے ہوتے تھے. حسب استطاعت وہ کچھ نہ کچھ فیسٹیول سے لے کر جاتے تھے. خواتین و حضرات, میں چونکہ پرانے زمانے کی آدمی ہوں تو ماضی پر میرے پنجے کی گرفت زیادہ ہے, کیونکہ آخری عمر میں یہی قبضہ رہ جاتا ہے. بڑے بڑے کارناموں کے جہاز بھلاوے کے سمندر میں غرق ہو جاتے ہیں, مگر ساتھ ساتھ اچھی اچھی یادوں کی چھوٹی چھوٹی کشتیاں ذہن کی سطح پر رواں دواں رہتی ہیں. اور بعض اوقات تو یہ بھی ہوتا ہے کہ یادوں کی وہ چھوٹی چھوٹی کشتیاں ذہن کی سطح پہ ابھرتی ہیں اور ہمیں یاد آنے لگتا ہے. آج مجھے پرانے فیسٹیولز بہت یاد آ رہے ہیں. ایسے کیسے لوگوں کا یاران نقطہ کا مجمع, سننے والوں اور آنے والوں کا ہجوم, لندن, امریکہ, ہندوستان, ایران, افغانستان سے آنے والے مندوبین, اور آواری کا کافی روم جس میں دنیا کے مسائل پر بولنے والے ذہن اور دماغ, اپنی اپنی باتوں میں منہمک سرشار. یکایک انتظامیہ کی طرف سے ایک لڑکی گھبرائی ہوئی داخل ہوتی ہے, میڈم, سر, جلدی چلیے جلدی چلیے, آپ کے سیشن کا وقت ہو رہا ہے. اور ہم باتوں میں منہمک, بھئی آپ کا سیشن تیار ہے, 2 منٹ باقی ہیں, اب رستہ ہی 2 منٹ میں طے ہوگا, وقت پر سیشن کا شروع ہونا بہت ضروری ہے. ہم اپنے سامعین کو انتظار نہیں کروانا چاہتے. اس کے بعد اجلاس کے اختتام پر کافی دیر تک آواری کا کافی روم جگمگاتا رہتا اور ہم سب مشترکہ طور پر کچھ باتوں میں ہم خیال ہو جاتے کہ شہر کی بڑی بڑی خوبصورت عمارتیں بے شکل ہو سکتی ہیں, کشادہ سڑکوں پر تنگ دلی کا احساس ہو سکتا ہے, حکومتوں میں زلزلے آ جاتے ہیں, مگر لوگ برے سے برے حالات میں ادب اور شعر کو سننا چاہتے ہیں, جاننا چاہتے ہیں, کتابوں سے محبت کرتے ہیں, شعر و شاعری کے لیے رات گئے تک جاگ سکتے ہیں, رقص و موسیقی کے لیے آج بھی لوگ صبح تک بیٹھنے کو تیار ہیں. خوشبوئے دل بری تھی جو اس پیرہن میں تھی. میرے لیے یوں بھی اب تقاریب میں شرکت کرنا تقریباً ناممکن ہو گیا. اس کی وجہ خرابی صحت سے زیادہ خرابی عمر ہے. لیکن او یو پی کی بہترین یادیں ہیں جو اس عمر میں بھی مجھے یہاں گھسیٹ کے لے آئیں. پھر ایک ایسی یاد جڑی ہے اس ادارے سے, اس شخص سے جو مجھے بے حد عزیز تھا. وہ لائق بھی تھا, منتظم بھی تھا, دوست نواز بھی تھا, بڑوں کا احترام اور چھوٹوں کی محبت بھی جانتا تھا. وہ تھا آصف فروخی. بنیادی طور پر बुनियादी तौर पर इस इदारे का काम ख़वातीन व हज़रात क्या था? किताबें छापना और उन किताबों को लोगों तक पहुंचाना। मगर यकायक अदबी फेस्टिवल ने इस तरह के रंग भर दिए, जिस शहर में ये फेस्टिवल जाता वहाँ की ज़मीन गुलरंग हो जाती थी। इस तरह का इज्तिमा मुतक़िद करने का सेहरा सबसे पहले OUP ही के सर बनता है। मेरी दुआ है कि इस सेहरे के फूल हमेशा खिले रहें और एहसास वफ़ा की पासदारी में महकते भी रहें। हमारे एक मुफक्किर ने बड़ी मानी ख़ेज़ बात लिखी थी कि दुनिया में बहुत सी कौमें बदनसीबी के चक्कर में फंसी रहती हैं और रेगज़ारों में हल चलाती रहती हैं, इस उम्मीद पर कि शायद किसी दिन सुबह सुबह कोई छोटी सी कोंपल सर उठा के खड़ी हो। हम भी इसी दौर से गुज़र रहे हैं। जब मैं अदबी फेस्टिवल में लोगों का ज़ौक़ व शौक़ देखती हूँ, आप सबको आते हुए देखती हूँ, दिलचस्पी लेते देखती हूँ, नौजवानों को मैं किताबों की स्टॉलों पर खड़ा हुआ देखती हूँ, उनको पढ़ते हुए देखती हूँ, ख़रीदते हुए देखती हूँ, तो मुझे लगता है कि हम भी जो रेगज़ारों में हल चला रहे हैं, कहीं न कहीं किसी सुबह हम एक छोटी सी कोंपल ज़रूर देखेंगे। ख़वातीन व हज़रात, अब जो बात मैं आपसे 2-1 मिनट के लिए कहने जा रही हूँ वो हमारे वक्त का सबसे बड़ा अलमिया है। इन दिनों कोई भी इज्तिमा हो, चाहे वो अदबी हो या वो गैर अदबी हो, लेकिन हम पर फ़र्ज़ आयद होता है कि हम गाज़ा के बारे में कुछ ना कुछ बात ज़रूर करें, वरना एक एहसास निदामत हमारा पीछा नहीं छोड़ेगा। हम और कुछ नहीं कर सकते तो हर्फ़ तसल्ली का हक़ तो अदा कर सकते हैं। हमने बहुत कुछ देखा ख़वातीन व हज़रात, इस 76-77 बरस में बहुत देखा, हौलनाक मरहलों से गुज़रे। इज्तिमाई तौर पर हमने कभी भी इससे पहले ताकतवर और बड़ी हुकूमतों की बेबसी और बेहिसी नहीं देखी थी जो इस ज़माने में हमने देखी। तारीख़ अपने फ़ैसलों और हकीकतों को रकम करने के लिए मौत की मुंतज़िर होती है, मगर ज़िंदगी वो नेमत है जो कारोबार मर्ग से न रुकती है और न घबराती है, वो आगे बढ़ती है और उसका काम ही आगे बढ़ना है। चिड़िया का बच्चा जब उड़ना सीख लेता है तो चील का और उकाब का खौफ उसके नर्म व नाजुक परों से दूर हो जाता है। तरक्की पज़ीर और ताकतवर मुल्कों को इस बात का यकीन होना चाहिए कि आखिर में जीत उन्हीं की होती है जो बज़ाहिर हारते नज़र आते हैं। ये मामला हथियारों का नहीं है, ये मामला अक्ल और इश्क का मामला है, और अपने वसी तर मानी के साथ हमेशा इश्क जीत जाता है। मगर हमने एक बात इन दिनों देख ली कि मार्का अगर हक़ व बातिल का हो तो आज भी रुख ज़्यादातर कूफे ही की तरफ होता है, करबला की तरफ नहीं। लोग भूल जाते हैं कि हमारे ही ज़माने में एक शायर जो मीनारे नूर की तरह था, वो कह गया है कि सज़ा जज़ा सब यहीं पे होगी, यहीं पे रोज़े हिसाब होगा, यहीं से उठेगा शोर महशर, यहीं अज़ाब व सवाब होगा। मगर हम लोग शायद इस अंजाम को भूल जाते हैं। मैं OUP की मजलिस इंतज़ामिया की ममनून हूँ कि उन्होंने मुझे आपसे इस गुफ्तगू का मौका दिया। तकारीर तो आपने सुनी और तकारीर आप सुनेंगे, ये तकरीर नहीं थी, इसे टूटी फूटी गुफ्तगू समझिए और मुझे इजाज़त दीजिए। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। नवाज़।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया ज़हरा निगाह साहिबा। और अगर ये फेस्टिवल गुले रंग हुआ है तो वो आपके होने से हुआ है। थैंक यू। We are honored here to have with us a distinguished former representative of the United Nations. Known for her commitment to global peace and dialogue, Ms. Maleeha Lodhi has dedicated her career to building understanding across borders. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Maleeha Lodhi to the podium.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good, is it evening, afternoon? Evening, good evening then in that case. I'm delighted to be here and I think it's awesome to see this audience in a city which used to be inhabited only by bureaucrats. But today I can see there's a lot of life in this audience and we've gone beyond bureaucrats. Let me get that pronunciation right. When OUP asked me to speak at this inaugural session, I said, your theme is changing mindsets. So, what do you want me to speak about? And they said, we leave it to you because you've been both a media person and a diplomat, and you have seen things from both sides of the camera, as it were. So speak about whatever you feel like. So here it is. I decided I'll speak about soft power, because I think soft power is something that is completely undervalued, underdeployed, and actually mostly ignored in the conduct of our country's diplomacy. And I really speak from my 16 years of experience in representing Pakistan. I've represented Pakistan in both bilateral and multilateral posts. And I am also somebody who takes tremendous pride in my country's culture, its music, its literature, and of course its rich heritage. So let me start by saying that we today, if we are to use soft power in our diplomacy, we have to first accept the fact that the concept of power itself has completely changed in the world, changed many decades ago. So military and economic power, while important determinants of a country's global weightage, its clout, is not sufficient for the success of any country's foreign policy. In fact, we are going through a period in the world where the world seems to be in flux, but countries need to augment their other attributes by the use of soft power. So let me now turn to very quickly flag 6 broad features of the global environment that have a bearing and should shape our diplomatic efforts to change mindsets abroad. First and most obvious is that we're living in an increasingly multipolar world where global power is much more dispersed. And in this multipolar environment, building and sustaining multiple options in foreign policy is actually a measure of how successful a foreign policy is. And this means greater outreach to many more countries than just a handful. And certainly, we should not be confined to those few countries that bail us out or give us money. A second feature of the international landscape is that in this multipolar setting, alliances matter, of course, but what also matters are informal networks of countries, groupings, coalitions, where countries come together when they agree on a particular set of policies or just one specific issue even. And this brings up the third feature, which is the rise of middle powers in the world today. Now, who are these middle powers? They're not superpowers, but they're countries who have attributes that gives them the capacity to shape global geopolitics. So they could have economic strength, they could have enormous soft power, they could have a very effective conduct in diplomacy, but whatever it is, this is what helps them become very important in the world. And soft power, as I said, is part of being a middle power. A fourth feature is that we are in a much more competitive global environment in which the world seems to be in hyperdrive. And navigating this terrain is much more challenging than ever before. And this means states that are not nimble, that are not agile, are likely to find themselves marginalized. And countries really need to be very innovative in their approach. The fifth feature, which I think is important, is that publics and the opinion of foreign publics count much more than ever before for a country to build overall goodwill and a positive image to facilitate cooperation with these countries. This is even more important in the digital age, where citizens' voices are amplified through social media platforms. This brings up the sixth point, which is, again, an important aspect of the global landscape, which is the dynamics unleashed by the information and digital era. This means the image of a country is being shaped by a variety of information sources or outlets. And managing this information landscape is a really challenging enterprise. And it needs special skills, but it also offers opportunities and levers to a country to get its message out and influence a variety of potential constituencies in another country and, of course, globally. Now, the same opportunities, as we know, are also open to a country's adversaries and detractors. They can also use the same levers to project negative images of a country, to spread disinformation, fake news, and basically to mischaracterize an enemy or an adversary. So this is particularly important to be able to deal with and confront. I think one can only sort of say how true it was when Professor Joseph Nye said, and I quote, "Politics in the information age is about whose story wins," unquote. This is key. If you get the story right, if it's credible, people believe you, then I think you're making progress in terms of your image, your diplomatic efforts, and your foreign policy. So it's in this environment that branding assumes critical importance, which is why nations create or expand global markets through branding. From tourism to commodities to manufactured goods to technological innovation, music, art, poetry, countries brand themselves to foster positive images and position themselves in world markets and, of course, in the international audience. So against this backdrop, if you keep these features of the global landscape in mind, it is clear that diplomacy is increasingly about shaping public perceptions and changing mindsets abroad in support of strategic goals, whether these strategic goals are security goals or the promotion of trade and investment or tourism. Really, public perceptions are what count, and they're influenced by an array of institutions and groups beyond governments. And I think that's the key lesson that our government needs to learn. So there are think tanks abroad, there are academia, there's the media, there's civil society actors, there are human rights organizations, and of course there are, above all, I think, corporate entities. Successful diplomacy requires an imaginative outreach to all of them, especially engagement with the intellectual forces that can shape public thinking about a country. So in a world where popular moods shift very quickly, diplomacy has to be, as I said before, agile, imaginative, innovative. And there is a need to remain in sync with shifting public sentiments in order to leverage them or deal with them. So, when we talk about soft power, I mean, we use the word liberally and quite loosely also. What is soft power? I think quite simply, soft power is not hard power. Hard power is a country's military or economic strength. Soft power is that country's appeal, its ability to persuade people by its appeal, whether that appeal rests on its culture, or its appeal rests on its human rights record, or its governance record, or the way it conducts itself in international diplomacy. So soft power is not about coercion, it's about persuasion. So if we keep this key difference in mind, I think for me, as a former diplomat, I saw at first hand how soft power can help promote Pakistan's foreign policy goals. And I'll give you two examples quickly. I was posted, as you probably might know, as Pakistan's permanent rep and ambassador to the United Nations. But when I arrived there, I found that very little, if anything, had been done to project and showcase Pakistan through cultural diplomacy? Practically nothing. And it was surprising because there is no better international platform for global outreach than the United Nations in New York, where 193 countries are represented. So you have a chance to affect all these countries and their perceptions. And of course, the media that's accredited there is truly international. It's not just American, it's not just British, it's international. So I did discover quite early, when I put together an art exhibition, what soft power can actually do. So there was this art exhibition of contemporary artists from Pakistan. I flew them across. We put up an exhibition at the United Nations. And I remember the UN Secretary General, when he came, he had a look at the paintings. And he stopped at a calligraphy. And then he looked at the other paintings. I had also borrowed a couple of Jamil Naqsh paintings. So he looked at the others and said, oh, your artists do this work as well? I thought you only did Islamic art. So it's really interesting how there was a perception that somehow that's all we did. Of course, Islamic art is very important. It's part of our identity, it's part of our culture. But, there's much more that we do. But it was really an election that we were contesting, that Pakistan was contesting, that enabled me to really see, if you like, the power of soft power. So we were contesting the election for a seat on the Human Rights Council of the United Nations. It's very important for us, for obvious reasons, for Kashmir, for taking up Palestine, as we were just talking about, and much else besides. And the election meant that I had to get the votes of 193 countries. And 37 of these countries are what are called SIDS, Small Island Developing States, or developing countries. We don't have diplomatic relations with most of them. That's 37 votes. And there the United States has the same weightage as Guatemala, let's say, or the Bahamas. So one vote for one country. And then there's the Africa bloc, 55 countries. We don't have diplomatic relations with many of them. Again, huge bloc. No election in the United Nations can be won without the Africans supporting you. And then, of course, you have the Latin American countries, 17 of them. Again, we, I think, have missions in perhaps 1 or max 2. So no relationships there. So this was the challenge. So how do you get their votes? So what I did was I did a concert in the imposing hall of the UN General Assembly, which is known as the Parliament of the World, a musical concert by Rahat Fateh Ali Khan. And the concert began with him, this was my special request, I requested him, not a pop number, please, start with Allahu. One of his qawwalis that starts with Allahu, so that the name of Allah echoes in the chambers of the General Assembly. And that's what he did. And it was packed, the hall. And I think at the end of the evening, where he also did some pop numbers, it was rocking. So there was Pakistan rocking and creating a completely different image of itself, rather than a country where bombs are going off all the time. It's a country that also rocks, enjoys itself, and a country that's proud of its Islamic heritage, its qawwalis, but it's also proud of so much else that defines us and defines our culture. Along with that, I had to do other things because that was not enough, so I did a celebration of Pakistani cuisine or street food, again in the UN Delegates Lounge, which is a very prestigious part of the United Nations. All the delegates congregate there, visitors come there from different governments. So we did that. Again, we were out of samosas and pakoras in, I think, 30 minutes because it was such a big, roaring success. People just loved it. Then I also was able to celebrate for the first time in the UN's history Eid at the UN. I had asked other Muslim countries to join me, and we did, and there were female ambassadors from other Muslim countries. So we celebrated Eid. And we did it with the usual, with, mehndi, henna, bangles, songs, dance, and nobody accused me of being anti-anything. It was fine, there's no problem. At the end of all of this, Pakistan won the election handsomely to the UN General Assembly. So, we aren't the only country that does this. Countries that have greater resources, of course, put up really elaborate cultural events. And it always pays off. And I was grateful to different governments at that time who helped me with the resources, because without money, you can't do any of this. But I'm also grateful to Pakistani artists, because I did 2 film festivals in New York. The first time Pakistani films had been shown in the United States in a festival. And in that festival, I got all the stars to come to New York. None of them wanted any fee, none of them. Not one star wanted a fee. And these were the top stars that we have, from Mahira Khan to Shehryar to, I can't name all of them, but Mahavesh. They all said, we just want to come for Pakistan. I didn't have the money for the second film festival. So I sent a WhatsApp message to young Pakistanis, boys and girls, who work on Wall Street. And within 2 hours, we had raised $50,000. Because these young people, and I asked them later, I said, why did you do this? You'll get nothing out of it. They said, we want to feel good about Pakistan. We want to feel good about Pakistan. And this is how we feel good about Pakistan. Through our culture, through our movies, through our music. This is what defines us. So I had the money. And I told the government, I don't need your money. I have it. And they wanted nothing in return, just to meet the stars, which they did. The second example, and I think I'll sort of end here with the second example. We have Natalie here. She will understand this. This was a long time ago, Natalie, before you probably joined the foreign service of your country. But when I was posted as ambassador to Washington, we had a huge challenge on our hands, because Pakistan at that time was under sanctions, under the infamous Pressler Amendment, as it was called then, for the nuclear. We had a nuclear program, the Americans didn't like it, they imposed sanctions on us. We said, fine. But the late and former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, had somehow managed to convince the then President Clinton that these sanctions must go, and that all the equipment that you'd embargoed, you'd kept our money and you'd kept our planes, you need to resolve that. That's not fair. And Bill Clinton said, you're right, we'll do it. So what was needed was a legislative action in the US Congress. In other words, an amendment to the Pressler Amendment was needed for this to happen. And obviously, it was the mission in Washington, the embassy in Washington, with me heading it, with my team, that had to do the heavy lifting. Because the problem with the Democratic administration was that it was the Republicans that controlled Congress at that time. So there were limits to how many congressmen or senators they could persuade. So the challenge for us was to actually go out there, convince people, and again use public diplomacy to do that. It wasn't just enough. It was important for the American legislators to know, and I think the American people do respond to issues of fairness. So one of the things, of course, that we did, our key message was, it's just not fair. You're just not playing fair with us. But if this is the way you want it, we're not going to change our nuclear program. But if this is the way you want it, fine. We've lived without we've lived under sanctions for such a long time, we can live some more. At any rate, I think we got a good response from them. But what we had to do was to really then do an outreach with the media, think tanks, and civil society groups, so that there was a momentum that was built up through public diplomacy, and the administration was helped by this, and congressional members, that there is a sentiment that says, we need to be fair. Fair, play fair by Pakistan. And that's exactly what happened. I had to, at that time, the Republicans, now the Republicans are even more far right, but at that time, the right had taken over the Republican Party, and one of the groups that I had to speak to was the guns lobby, because they're so powerful. in the Republican Party. So, we had to do these things which, there was no manual. There was no book that I could consult and say, okay, I tick this off, I tick this off. We were sort of playing it by ear, and we were improvising as we went along. And I think what the team got right was exactly this, that you had to do a public outreach. You had to tell the people who mattered beyond the government, in the legislature and elsewhere, who were influencing policy, who we are, why we deserved what we deserved, and therefore the need, again, to use soft power. So, I'm just a great believer in soft power. I think people sometimes, and I'm going to end here, I think people sometimes think it's only song and dance. It is song and dance, yes, but it's more than song and dance. Soft power is how a country and its other attributes appeal to another country or people in another country. So you use whatever you have in your sort of diplomatic toolkit. But I do think that at the end of the day, unless our foreign policy, and I'll end on this note, unless our foreign policy integrates soft power as a very fundamental part of our diplomacy, I don't think we will do very well, because we're in a completely different era now. This is not an era where you only use geography. This is not an era where you use some of the old traditional methods to convince governments. You have to convince governments and others. So convincing governments is never enough. So let me end. I don't really have any way to end it with a poetic flourish, but I will say only this, that we took not the Karachi Literary Festival, but the Lahore Literary Festival to New York as well. I negotiated with Asia Society. And I can't tell you how festivals like these are so important because they hold a mirror to who we are. They celebrate us, they celebrate Pakistan, and yes, we have our set of challenges. We have lots to be very down about, but we have lots to be very up about as well. And I think one of the ups is this. It's our literature, it's our culture, it's our music, it's our poetry. So thank you for being here this evening, and I hope you'll attend the other sessions too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maleeha Lodhi, for those insightful words. Needless to say, all of us Pakistanis are extremely proud of you. Thank you.